Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Sirius Report. Well, the internationalization of the yuan is accelerating as the rest of the world starts dumping U.S. assets. Paul, as always, I want to thank you for being a part of the discussion, and it looks like China has found the perfect time to start expanding not just the yuan, but other financial systems internationally.
Yeah, and thanks obviously for joining as well today. It's always a pleasure as ever, Ken. And yeah, the internationalization of the yuan has been ongoing for quite a few years in various ways, and I've discussed this on my own podcast. But now we are starting to see a major acceleration of that, and the timing is not a coincidence as dumping of US assets continues and we're starting to see less and less appeal in the US dollar, US Treasury complex, which for a long time was seen as the safe haven, our asset of and the reserve asset of the world, which of course is also now giving way to gold. But we're not here to discuss gold today. That will come on a later date, but in the near future. And it's worth noting some developments. And one of those is that the PBOC, who's obviously China's central bank, the People's Bank of China, has announced that it wants to encourage state-owned enterprises to prioritize the use of yuan in payments and settlements as they expand overseas. So this isn't just in terms of state-owned enterprises and in terms of existing relationships between that which is done domestically, but also this is to expand the usage of the yuan in those payments and settlements. Now, this is clearly a significant event. It's a big, huge acceleration of the Chinese government's desire to significantly increase the internationalization of the yuan. And this is on the back of the fact of all this ongoing trade tensions because of Trump's tariff policies. What's also worth noting is the PBOC is trying to urge commercial banks in Shanghai to increase cross-border credit offerings. So what they want to do is reduce the yuan financing costs for companies and also increase significantly yuan denominated imports and exports. And they've also expressed an intent to enhance, which is China's alternative to SWIFT, the cross-border interbank payment system, or SIPS. And there have been many developments over the years with respect to SIPS. And bearing in mind, there seems to be a lot of confusion as to where this operates and functions. A lot of people think it's a component of SWIFT, and it's not. And it's also worth noting, and this ties in with the digital yuan. I know there's people who have grave reservations about so-called central bank digital currencies, but what the PBOC wants to see is the exploration and implementation of blockchain technology to provide what they term secure and efficient settlement and clearing houses effectively for global trades, for shipping, investments, and financing denominated in yuan. This doesn't get any clearer that this is China seeking to take advantage of all the unrest that exists, even with traditional allies and Western financial institutions, in terms of utilizing the dollar. Now, this doesn't mean they're all going to jump ship and utilize the yuan, but if they want to operate inside China or they want to operate with Chinese state-owned enterprises, state-owned banks, there might be more encouragement for them to utilize the yuan or to buy Chinese yuan-denominated debt, etc. And also, and we've talked about this in many different ways over the years, the PBOC wants to support Shanghai's commodity exchanges in how they collaborate with other overseas exchanges. Why? Because that would allow them to extend the use of yuan benchmark prices in commodities. So not just gold, but also silver, other metals, other potentially soft commodities. That's entirely possible. And the fact that this was a statement that came from the PBOC, the National Financial Regulatory Administration, the State Administration of Foreign Exchange, and the Shanghai Municipal Government means this is hugely significant. It's a major step forward. And the idea, of course, China will always say, we're not trying to replace the dollar. No, they're not. But if the dollar's floundering and they see an opportunity to increase the internationalization of the yuan, then they're most certainly going to do so. And that's why that is an initial point I wanted to make with regards to the internationalization of the yuan, which of course includes utilizing the digital yuan and also the SIPs.
Yeah, what's really fascinating is China is not the only one with this announcement at a time when the dollar is really starting to see a complete, nations, businesses, trading, et cetera, move out. Fewer people are buying treasuries, fewer, both corporations as well as foreign countries. But it was kind of fascinating that just before this really came to the forefront, China making it a policy, the PBOC, to start expanding the internationalization of the yuan. But also, Macron has come out and said that he sees that the euro could usurp the dollar as at least the Western reserve currency of choice. So we're at that 50-year point where historically pure fiat currencies as a global reserve reached their endpoint. Going back to 1971 or actually 73 when the petrodollar came into existence, we're really at 50, 52 years. So it has been devalued. It has pretty much run its course and been expanded to a certain point where the debt levels have made it just not really a function. And the US has decided that they are going to weaponize the reserve currency. So it's the perfect opportunity for China to come out and say, we're not seeking to replace the dollar, but we're seeking an alternative in trade with us. We don't care what you do over there. As a matter of fact, the yuan is not tied to the basket of currencies in the DXY, the dollar index. So they are a free agent to be able to, and they have the SIPs, which is outside of SWIFT, to be able to function and provide opportunities and alternatives to nations in trade where they can bypass the tariff threats and bypass any type of weaponization that the U.S. Is using through the dollar to try to force other nations to stay under that umbrella.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's worth noting the following is China has the onshore yuan and it also has the offshore yuan. And the principal conduit for the offshore yuan is Hong Kong. Effectively, Hong Kong acts as a firewall between offshore China and onshore China. And it's worth noting that HSBC Hong Kong actually joined China's SIPs as a direct participant. And bear in mind that in terms of trade finance, HSBC is the biggest player in the world. And why are they doing it? Because they have a key role in Beijing's desire to expand the use of the yuan. So by joining the SIPs, that will make it easier for overseas companies, therefore, to trade and invest using China's currency. And also, it makes payments far faster and far cheaper. But what it underpins is the idea that HSBC's Hong Kong business is going to play an important role in China's policy goals. And the view in HSBC Hong Kong is if you join SIPS, that's because that is in response to a desire by their clientele, that there's a lot more room to grow the yuan's usage in overseas markets. And therefore, the idea of the US dollar dominating global payments, as we said, has been diminishing. And this is another major significant step. And of course, China wants to promote SIPS as this alternative to SWIFT because of all the problems it faces of sanctioning companies like Huawei and all the problems we've seen with tariffs, all the issues about Taiwan. Definitely, this is a response to the weaponization of the dollar, as you said, Ken. And what's very telling is now we're seeing many large international banks, including Western institutions, who are making what is termed two-way bets on competing payment systems. And SIPS provides these alternative arrangements for cross-border payments. And therefore, it makes the internationalization of the yuan happen far more rapidly. And if you look at the use of the yuan in cross-border transactions, it reached a record high in 2024. And if you go back, it was used in 135 countries globally. This is not small fry, it's not irrelevant, it's hugely significant, and the scalability of that in those countries can be achieved quite easily. And because HSBC is a major player in terms of cross-border payments and the world's largest trade finance bank, it makes eminent sense for them to be participating in this. And also, if you look at the Hong Kong unit of Standard Chartered Bank, which is a UK bank, that's also a direct participant in SIPS. And therefore, therefore Standard Chartered's Hong Kong business can settle payments in yuan directly for the first time. And it's just repeat and rinse. And it also ties in with the reasoning behind why the yield on renminbi or yuan bonds have been falling, because it's attractive to foreign investors as well to increase their holdings. I'm not saying at this point it's a safe haven to oppose the dollar, but it's a far more stable market, and foreign holdings of domestic yuan bonds is increasing and continues to increase. And of course, foreign capital sees this as a way of diversifying out of US assets, not entirely into Chinese assets, but increasingly so in the recent weeks and months. That also helps enhance market liquidity of yuan denominated assets and makes the market more internationalized, which China, of course, is going to have to do so. And therefore, if you have this investment environment that's conducive to international participation, and you have this financial opening up of Chinese markets to the outside world, then you're going to get more and more foreign investors who want to participate in that market. And that's effectively, in a very high level sense, what China's doing. And there is huge amounts of developments that have been going on for years. I discuss them in my own podcasts. Most people aren't even aware of how the nuts and bolts of yuan internationalization are increasing and have been increasing, but also significantly so, I would say, through the back end of 2024 through into the first, 4 months or so of 2025. So I'll give way to you, Ken, because I've got another point I want to mention about Hong Kong and how that relates to cooperation with West Asia and why it's hugely significant also. And this relates, of course, to the yuan as well.
You know, something that popped in my head when we were talking about this, the internationalization of the currency is simply the next step in what almost appears to be, especially coming out of the pandemic, an opening to the world of China as a whole. Back in 2023, they had where Visa and MasterCard connected to directly linked to the Chinese mobile payment platforms, Alipay, WeChat Pay, etc. So that was sort of like offering the opportunity for international, for those outside China to be able to function, when they came and visit. Then, of course, there was the change in the visa requirements where China was like, we're opening up to the world and giving people the opportunity. More and more you see on social media, uh, people from Europe, people from the United States going to China and doing their own, podcasts or live streaming from China and saying, we had no idea this is what it was. It's also becoming increasing more and more tourism. So as the world starts really recognizing China as China opens up, we had also with during this trade war thing, China has or a number of different individuals are doing live streaming or record videos of really what products the West is trying to sell and the opportunity, the alternatives and the opportunities to buy directly from China for much cheaper for the same quality. So China is like it almost is like Japan, in the 19th century when they were an isolated island and suddenly they opened up to the world. I think China is doing that, and internationalizing the yuan is going to make it much easier for the world not just to transact with China, but also to come in and experience China.
Yeah, that's part of opening up, and China will have to do this. It has to do it in a measured way because the thing that infuriates the United States more than anything, it doesn't have a totally open market. Therefore, currently, the Chinese markets can't be attacked easily. And that's why China does what it does. It's very cautious about how much it opens up to the West because it doesn't want to leave it an open door to be attacked financially and cause huge damage to its currency or financial institutions in the process. But a final point I want to make in this is the kind of development that is very commonplace through China and also through the Hong Kong itself. Is there was a point where the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region led this delegation of over 100 people to do with financial innovation and technology sectors. They went to Saudi Arabia to deepen cooperation between Hong Kong and the Middle East. And also this consolidates Hong Kong's status as a global financial center. So they were from the Hong Kong Monetary Authority, Securities and Futures Commission, the clearing. And the whole purpose is yes, it improves Hong Kong's status, but also allows businesses to function in an offshore capacity with China onshore. So it also relates to the yuan itself. This is why I'm mentioning it. And of course, they already have, okay, people don't like ETFs, but they've already have ETFs tracking Hong Kong indices on the Shanghai Exchange. I mean, therefore, local investors can invest in the Hong Kong stock market easily. I mean, there's also the fact that that will expedite more two-way financial products to be launched. That fosters capital flows. It brings more capital from the Middle East to Hong Kong and vice versa to China. That also helps the financial connectivity of the Belt and Road. And you can have a lot of cooperation in many areas of the financial sector to include digital payments and blockchain technology and fintech products, and enhances cooperation in innovation and technology. And this is how China goes about internationalizing the yuan, growing relations in a win-win cooperation in this capacity with Saudi Arabia. And obviously Hong Kong can help the development of West Asia and the wider global south. It contributes to the development of the Belt and Road Initiative in the process. And it's very much a repeat and rinse operation. And Hong Kong has become immensely important, as I say, as this firewall and gateway between offshore China and onshore China. And wherever you see developments related to Hong Kong, then you have to pay close attention to what that development means in the context of China itself. These are just some of the examples of the internationalization of the yuan. There are many others, and we'll discuss more in the future because, contrary to all the nonsense you read from so-called Western experts who don't know anything about China, the internationalization of the yuan is growing, it's intensifying, it's far bigger than people realize because there is an awful lot of trade that China doesn't declare that is done in a non-SWIFT capacity. And why should it declare all of its international trade? There's no point doing so. I mean, there is huge amounts of trade done with the Russians, and because of sanctions policy, there's no declaration of it, but we know it's happening. And that's just one example of that.
Yeah, one final note I'll point is to the fact that there's a graphic that's been going around social media that shows in 2000, the United States was the primary trade partner with about 65% of the world. That was in 2000. In 2024, that has now switched to where China is the primary trade partner with about 80% of the world, which includes nearly all of Africa, a lot of South America, et cetera. So, in the past, we had the global reserve currency attributed to empires, but as the multipolar world emerges, rather than being empirical and being a reserve currency, the primary currency of trade is going to be the one who is your primary trade partner. And I think it's the perfect opportunity, as I mentioned before, for them to start internationalizing it because their trade partners are going to want to be able to work bilaterally, their currency to your currency, rather than have to use a middleman, which we've done for the past, 80 years, going back to Bretton Woods. Anyway,
Yeah,
Paul, go
just a
ahead.
final point, Ken, to mention. It's also in multilateral formats like with the ASEAN group, which are going to sign a free trade agreement with China. That will be conducted a lot in Yuan. There's also the RCEP, where that will happen as well. So it's not just bilateral, it's also in massive multilateral formats where enormous amounts of trade, and it continues to grow, is now operating between global south countries such as the ASEAN countries. So I thought it was just worth mentioning that.
No, it's a great point. Great point. Paul, as always, thank you for your insight and for being a part of this discussion.
Yes, and likewise.
And to everybody here at the Sirius Report community, thank you for all of your support. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, comment, send this out to anybody you think it might be important to. And until the next time we get together, have a great day.